Welcome back to the shop, everyone. This week's video takes place in 2024, week 22, that is May 27th to June 2nd, and at the start here we are doing some exhaust work. Now, right now the exhaust is just kind of pointed at the return and supply fuel line and some of the stuff up there, and I don't really care for that. Typically exhaust is hot in theory, it just came out of, an explosion, so I don't really want that pointed directly at fuel related stuff if I can avoid it. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a bit of a measurement from the pipe itself to find out what angle it's cut at, and then I'll transfer that to this pipe, and then I'll kind of merge them together and get it so that the exhaust is pointing down out towards the back of the car and away from the fuel lines. Would it have been fine? Maybe. But that's just something I'm really not willing to take a risk with. Gasoline is flammable. The last thing I want to do is be intentionally throwing something hot at it, or, if the car backfires and a flame comes all the way through the exhaust pipe, throwing flames at it, that wouldn't be good. So let's at least get it, turned and down towards the back of the car and more or less towards the out of the car. I am going to redo this exhaust eventually. So I'm not too concerned about how or like the longevity of this. I just need it to be safe that I can drive around with it, if that kind of makes sense. And I think putting this turnout, getting it out and back under the car, it should be plenty safe. So I did kind of miss some stuff there. I had the camera turned away for whatever reason, but I'm just kind of tacking it in place. I don't need it 100% fully welded. The majority of the exhaust is going to get out the pipe. Yes, some is going to escape through the holes in the welds, but I'm just not that concerned about it. But we're going to do the same thing on this side. Just put some little tack welds on it, get the pipe away from the pointing at the chassis itself, and just hopefully get the exhaust to clear out the back. Now that's done, we're just going to do a tiny little bit of cleanup here, get stuff out of the way so I can walk around the car again. And what I'm doing right here is I'm making a note for myself to make sure I put power steering fluid in the, power steering system before I start the car, because if I don't do that, running a pump that's expecting a fluid dry is a really bad thing. So I don't want to do that, so leave myself a note. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to reinstall the horn on this side of the car. I had the horn off while I was doing some of the intercooler work stuff. I think the bracket right now, the intercooler piping hits the bracket, so I just kind of bent it out, and then I'll get the horn back up there, put the bolt back on, and reconnect it. So now I'm gonna drop the car back down on the ground, and then I'll move the car that's in the driveway out of the way a little bit so I can, back the car out and, run it. Before we get too carried away, I'm going to quickly torque up the wheels. In my mind, I'm taking this thing out for a ride tomorrow, so I want to make sure all the wheels are torqued. So with that, we can roll the car back and then we can do a little bit more cleanup here. Oh, look at that. We're pulling a bunch of stuff out. Almost like I might be looking to get the hood out of there so I can put the hood on the car. That would be very exciting, wouldn't it? So with the hood out, I am just looking around the shop to see if I can find the hood bolts. I would have hoped that I would have kept them somewhere safe and easy to get at. I'm looking in this old container of bolts, and I never ended up finding the bolts for the hood. But I can kind of throw this on and just kind of see how it's looking, and check the clearance, because I got the throttle bracket. I did flip that throttle bracket around, as you may remember, but I still need to check the clearance, make sure that it's good. So I'm just going to push the car back into the shop because, I need hood or bolts for the hood. And I'm looking at the back, and I'll show you, like, it's angled. Like, the left side is lower than the right side. So I'm just going to go and grab a level, and, sure enough, like, the axle doesn't seem to be perfectly straight in the car. And I'm like, well, is it suspension? And maybe one of the tires is low on air, so check some tire pressures. And I'm not really sure why, the diff wouldn't be perfectly straight. Maybe one of the 9-inch ends is welded up wrong, but I'm not too worried about it at this point in time. I mean, what's done is done. I mean, I'm gonna drive the car. So there, I just had my whole bolt box out, and I'm still looking for the hood bolts to see if I can find them, see if I put them somewhere, but I didn't, so I just ended up having to go to the store and buy some new ones. So I got them now, so I can start working on getting this hood fitted. It really sucks doing this by myself, but such is life. So I just grabbed some cardboard because, you know, I don't want to completely destroy all of the paint when I slide this up there and hold it up and do this on my own. You know, once I paint the car, this is going to be a whole different ball game, and I'm going to do a lot more to protect all of the paint. And I will probably, you know, if it's just me doing it, I'd actually probably end up using the cherry picker to lift the hood up with some straps and some nice soft cables, and then get it into place, and then put the bolts on. But for right now, I don't really care about the paint on the hood or on the car itself, as long as I don't dent it. So I can just lift the hood up, kind of hold it in place, get a couple bolts on it, and go from there. Alright, so now that the hood is loosely on, you can kind of see it is not lined up at all. It's way over to the right. So I'm just going to spend some time, loosen the bolts off, and just kind of manhandle the hood and get it into position. Get it kind of lined up so that the gaps kind of make sense, kind of look nice. Alright, so now that we have our hood in a place where it's reasonably centered, we can start work on clearancing the throttle bracket a bit more, because it's still hitting the scoop. And the whole idea with this build is I wanted to hide the engine under the stock hood and stockish scoop. I think that's a stock scoop off of a Mustang or a Capri or something. It might be flipped around, but I want to hide the engine under it. Now, my idea was like, oh, it's gonna look stock-ish. You know, you're not gonna notice that it's whatever. Yeah, that all goes out the window because you can hear the Pro Charger whine a fucking mile and a half down the road. So the kind of like, childish ambition of it's going to be a bit of a sleeper, you're not going to know that there's anything special, yeah, that's gone. As soon as you pull it beside this, you hear the Pro Charger whine, it's got a blower. Anyways, not much I can do about that. All I can do is still keep this under stock hood, and so all that is I'm just cutting the top off of this throttle cable bracket. I don't need it, and then just making it so that it clears, and it does, and I have enough room that I can confidently go down the road and not worry about breaking the hood scoop or anything. So just checking on my handiwork, and yeah, it's good now. I'm really happy with it. So one of the boxes I was excited about, Aero Catch. So I've also got 47 in the shop with me here for a little bit. He's a fun little guy. But one of the things is I need some way to keep the hood closed. I don't have your typical latch on the front. I don't have your typical radiator supports. So I can't use the typical, rad latch. So I'm going with hood pins instead. So I've chosen to go with an under panel style. So these are going to mount from the bottom, 6 screws on the top. And if I had to do this again, I would probably go top mount. On the right side, I wasn't quite as delicate with the cutting as I should have been. But that's life, and that's a lesson I need to learn, to just be more patient and take my time in doing this, even though I want it done quickly and fast. So right here, I'm just trying to figure out exactly where I'm going to put these catches and how I'm going to mount them to the car. And 47 wants to get in there. Oh, look at him. Well, that's my guy. God. So cute. So anyways, back to figuring out where I'm going to put this. I know I've got that little bar that goes all the way across. I'm going to mount to that because that should be more than strong enough to hold the hood down. And I'm just trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to mount these. So I like the latch mounted a certain way, just aesthetically. But I decide, and you'll see this, I originally had it, facing one way. And then I looked at it and I went, well, the thing is, if for some reason as I'm driving down the road, the hood latch button, releases halfway or whatever, the latch would be, up and then into the wind. So in theory, the wind going over the hood could potentially catch it and pull it back and release the latch. I was like, that's actually not a good idea. So I end up flipping it around, whereas if the buttons open one click, the air would just go over top of it, and I don't think it would ever close it, but it wouldn't force it open. So those are kind of the decisions you got to make when you're doing this stuff. Is, well, I think it looks better this way, but I think I'm going to be safer this way. So I've kind of chosen where I want this on the car. So what I'm trying to do is lay out on the hood exactly where I need to chop some big holes in it. And so I tried using a limestone. That didn't work on the clear, so I just grabbed a Sharpie, and I realized I should just clean some of the dust off of this hood so I have a nice, good, clean canvas to work on. And then from there, I can grab my square and continue. So I'm making lines based on the fender, where the fender is. And, thinking about that now, it's probably not a good idea. Those fenders might not have been exactly lined up, but whatever. So making a straight line across, vertical line in, the middle of the hood. And then this is where my initial layout is. And then you'll see I look at the the latch, and I'm like, you know, I don't really like this. So you'll see here in a second, I think I open it up. Or do I start laying out the second one before I change my mind? Well, I'm gonna start laying out the second one before I change my mind, I guess. So another consideration I have is that my Pro Charger and pulley is right there in that same area. So I need to make sure that wherever I'm putting these hood pins, that it's not going to interfere with that. So before I really do any of the heavy lifting on getting these hood latches installed, you know, putting giant holes in the hood, I want to make sure the hood's lined up fairly squarely and that, you know, everything's kind of hooked up pretty well. As you can see, there is a lot of work that is going into getting this, lined up just perfectly. I don't want it too much to the left, too much to the right, too angled, etc., etc. Like, it's just a ton of fitment work, and it's, really finicky. All right, I am finally at a point where I am happy with the hood fitment, so I am just, doing some calculations, and I'm going to start getting everything all marked out and ready to cut. So I guess we jump ahead a little bit here to where I've already got this partially laid out on the car. But you'll see here in a second that when I put the latch down, like I've got it marked out as, that's where I'm going to put it. I kind of realized I'm actually going to flip this the other way. And as I mentioned before, the reason why I'm flipping this around is because I want it so that if for whatever reason that hood latch undoes like the one step, the wind's not going to potentially catch it and pull it off. So even though I think it looked better aesthetically the other way with the bigger end forward and then, it going smaller in the back, for safety's sake, for safety's sake, let's try and speak correctly. I think this is going to be the better way. So what I'm doing is I'm just throwing some tape down, because hopefully as I'm drilling holes and cutting the crap out of this, I don't want the paint to flake off and chip really aggressively or excessively. So by putting tape down, that usually helps with that. So put tape down, lay it down on both sides. So what I will do is I will take a just a big old stepper drill bit, drill a nice big hole into there, and then I will move over to an air saw to cut more out, and then I will final cut with some files. And then there is some structure on the underneath of the hood that needs to be removed, because this whole unit installs from the bottom up. So I'll do that with a die grinder and a cutoff wheel, and I'll do the same thing on both sides. Yeah, let's go. Now that I have the general shape cut out, what I need to do is put some holes in the hood. So those are 6 holes for the bolts. And so luckily I cut this hole out well enough where I can just kind of hold the latch in place, mark it off, center punch, and drill it all out. And as with almost every project, there's always going to be some final fitting. So now that I've got that done, it's not installing 100%, so pull it all back off. I'll do some more filing and just kind of fit it in properly. Alright, so with that first latch installed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start designing up a mount that is going to go onto the front crossbar that, is bolted between the two different pieces of the front end, and that's what the hood pin is actually going to bolt to. So a few things that are in the way. Pro charger's in the way there, so I got to be considerate of that. I can't have it too far forward, otherwise it's going to be hitting the bar. Can't have it too far back, otherwise it's going to be directly on the Pro Charger. Can't have it too far left, right, etc. So these are all of the things that I'm thinking about while I'm doing this. And of course, we're going to do some CAD drawing, so some cardboard aided design, and we will later translate that into CAD or computer assisted design. But for right now, this is just going to get me the angle of that bar. It's going to get me a rough dimension. And then I can go off camera, design it all out, do a few iterations. And then once I am happy with it, I will cut it over on the plasma cutter. So here we have a rough design. That hole is in the ballpark. I'm going to be a little bit smart and adjust it or design it with a slot in it so that the hood pin can actually slide, backwards and forwards quite a bit and have some good amount of adjustments. So just like that, from a cardboard template to bam, cutting this out on the plasma cutter. And there it is. Easy peasy. Just took, I don't even know how long off camera. I was probably, an hour getting that all designed up. But that's only because I'm really not that great. There was a bunch of revisions. I can't exactly print out the full size. The program I was using was kind of janky. But hey, we got it out. And now we're going to get the hood pin attached to the catch, put the bracket on the bottom, and then kind of just, figure out where to put that on that bar. And then we will tack this in, get it welded on, and we got our first hood pin done. So we just threw the first tack on, we're just checking it, and this thing is not lined up correctly, so we will just really quickly break that tack, move it over to where it needs to be, and re-tack it. So we got that second tack on, and you know, if I were really smart, I would have double checked this again just to make sure it's where I wanted it to be, but I am very confident that is where I want it to be. So we're just going to go ahead and weld this thing on fully. And fortunately, that lands right where I need it to land. It's in there. I'm pretty happy with that. I don't think it could have happened any better. So now we are just going to do the exact same thing on the other side. now that we have both of the hood pin tabs mounted to the car, what we need to do is we actually need to cut down the hood pin. So they send it, and there's, I don't know, probably a solid 6 inches, probably something like that. We don't need that much, so I've just kind of loosely thrown the hood pin in there, and I'm going to cut it down to size, and then I will clean up the end on the belt sander. And then what we're going to have to do after that is there's these little pieces of rubber that come with the kit. So what I need to do is measure that rubber and cut it down until the hood squishes the rubber just a little bit, enough to, you know, when you close the hood pins, there's a little bit of tension on there because you don't want it flopping around in the wind. Yeah, so cut them both down, clean them up, and then we can put them on the car. I know it's kind of hard to see, but what I'm doing right here is I'm taking my X-Acto knife and I'm cutting that rubber down even more than it already was. And that's just to get it so that, you know, as I said, there's just a tiny little bit of tension when you push the hood down, and so it's not flopping around. And for the install, we are going to put a dab of blue Loctite on there so that, you know, we can still break it off, but it's not going to vibrate and loosen itself, because that wouldn't be good, because if it vibrates and that nut falls down, the nut could fall into the Pro Charger belt and, you know, chew up the cog and stuff, and then, you know, the hood could possibly fly off. So we don't want that, so let's just, you know, a little bit of Loctite, make our day. All right, now the hood pins are in. We are going to throw a little bit of power steering fluid in this because I want to fire the car. All right, so now that we got some oil in the reservoir, I'm just turning the wheels just to see if this is going to do anything. I didn't really think it was going to do much because without the pump running, fluid's just not going to go through the system. The pump is just going to actually block it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of cleanup, and then we're going to fire up the car and, you know, make sure the power steering pump works and all that good stuff. Alright, now that the shop is in a somewhat decent state, we can back this up. We don't need to back it out, and then we can keep our cleanup going a little bit, and then we'll get into starting the engine. Yeah, so we can just fire this up, and after I fire it up, I just take a quick look to see how much fluid is in the power steering reservoir. I need some, so add a little bit more. I didn't need too much more, and that was fine. That was all it needed, but I can turn the wheels, and that all works, and everything seems to be all good. I was going to try and run the engine a bit more, but the battery is dead, so I'm just going to go over to the back side of the car, get my battery charger out, and quickly hook up the battery charger and let this charge up for a little bit. But of course I need my axe handle in order to hold the back glass open, because I don't have functioning struts on the back, and that's the only stick that I have at the moment. So with a dead battery but on charge, let's just continue cleaning up until that battery is ready to go. So one thing that I'm probably eventually going to need to do is I've got a rollover valve for the fuel system. So essentially what it is it'll allow air to vent out, but in case the car ever flipped over, a little ball would close, and then it should in theory help prevent gas from flowing out. So I was just kind of looking at it there and trying to figure out how I'm going to install it, but it's not critical at this point in time. Alright, so now we got some cleanup done. We need gas in the car, so believe it or not, that's pretty important. So throwing some gas in, you can see the back bumper, and just kind of in the shot, it's raining outside, so I'm not really taking the car too far out of the shop because I don't have the sunroof in, so that would just get me really wet for no good reason. But whatever, filling up in the rain isn't going to hurt anything. Even if a little tiny bit of water got into the fuel system, it's not going to affect anything that much. As much as you don't want any fuel or any water in there, it's not going to kill anything. So now we got that filled up. That sign on the steering wheel is no longer valid. We put power steering fluid in. So I think I was just checking the battery there to see if it was charged up enough, and I think it is, but just gonna do a little bit more cleanup here. right, so one thing that I've kind of been thinking about is the interior on the car. How much interior am I going to put into it? What interior pieces do I have? Obviously, with the roll cage, you saw a long time ago I had to cut the dash up. I just found a wire connector for my wipers. I looked for that wiper connector for a solid 20 minutes in the shop before, and I actually ended up having to go onto eBay and buying an entirely new wiper switch assembly with the harness and everything else, because I thought I had lost it. As it turns out, I hadn't lost the connector. I have the connector. It was just on the shelf, so I'm like, oh, it kind of sucks I had to buy this other piece, but it is what it is. I have a spare, so that's fine. But yeah, so I'm just kind of starting to pull some of the parts and pieces off the shelf and just kind of look at it. And now I kind of debated on leaving this in this video or taking this out. Ultimately, obviously, since it's here and I'm talking about it, I left it in. But I'm just going through all of the parts and everything on my shelf there. I'm going to pull it all out, lay it all out on the floor, kind of take stock of what I have. The shelves are really messy. There's nothing organized. So let's just figure out exactly what I have and what I need for the interior of the car, because I do want to put a bunch of interior back in. I want the center console. I want the shifter boot. Those are things that I really want, because I like the look of it, and it'll make it a little bit less race car, even though it is kind of race car-y. But if I can put a proper interior in there and make it look good, I mean, that's just bonus. So yeah, there's really not a whole lot gonna go on for the next while as I pull all of this stuff out and go through it. So watch or don't, it's entirely up to you. Yeah, so as I have this all laid out, one thing I'll say is that, some of these things aren't going back in this car. My entire heater box, which is right in front of me, it's a big chunk. It didn't fit in the car. It didn't support AC, so that's not going back in. That coil isn't going back in. That's an old coil. Does it work? Probably. I have individual coils on this car, and any other car I go, I'll probably do the same. There's a carb spacer here at the bottom or middle right-ish, bottom middle right. Obviously, this car is not carbureted. I'm fuel injected, so I won't be using that. I doubt I would go carbureted on any other cars. Although, if I did do like a Holly Sniper on a car, I might throw a spacer on there, but probably not. You know, that old air cleaner. I'm playing with the hood prop right in my hand. So there's a lot of stuff here that's just not going to be installed on this car. You know, I'm going to do my best to install a lot of the trim pieces, but up near the roof, I don't have a lot of space between the cage. So yeah, I'm just kind of going through it all. And then we get some Answer. We get a quick visit from Answer. That's my sweet gal. Alright, so at this point in time, the car battery has charged enough that, you know, the engine's running right now. I was able to get it fired back up, and I'm just looking at the power steering, making sure I got enough fluid in there, and then I can turn the wheels left and right after I piss fluid all over the place because I'm an idiot and didn't use a funnel, but whatever. Turn the wheels all the way left, turn them all the way right, kind of bleed the system, and then, you know, just double check the reservoir, make sure I got enough fluid. Yeah, I mean, what more can you ask for? Since the car is running, might as well look through the Holley software and try and see if I can get this thing to idle reasonably well, and I do get it to idle reasonably well. I'm actually kind of happy with it. So at this point, what I want to do is, even though it's raining out, I want to just back the car into the driveway a little bit and do a little bit more working on the car as it's, you know, sitting here idling. So I'm just taping some cardboard to the roof because it'll at least stop the rain for a little bit while I do this. So as I'm backing the car out of the driveway, I'm just like scrape. I was like, what the fuck? And yeah, sure as shit, that intercooler, which I did a bunch of work on to get it up as high as I can, is still scraping on the ground. So I'm just kind of moving the car forward a little bit just to see just how tight it is and what I can do. Jump back in, back it up, and let's just throw a couple of boards down there. Just to, what'll happen is I'll come in, and as long as I'm lined up fairly straight so that the tire is on the board but the intercooler isn't, it'll raise the car up just enough that the intercooler goes up, clears the ledge, and then once the tire clears, I'm in the shop and it's flat again. So I only have this problem when the back is super duper jacked up. I don't think I'll have any issues with speed bumps because I don't think any speed bumps are that freaking big, but, you know, maybe. And then what I'm actually going to have to eventually do is I'm eventually going to have to build a new intercooler for this, because it's just not good enough. So now that I got that board set up, I can back the car out into the driveway and sit there with it running and do a bit of tuning. If you've noticed that the cardboard has progressively gotten much more wet in these last 20-30 seconds, it's because I didn't move the camera. So while I was just sitting in the driveway, not doing anything anyways, all that stuff just got cut out. But I do still need to reorganize all the stuff that's in the front of the car, so we can't bring the car all the way in the shop, but we can bring it in enough that we're not leaking through the sunroof. Well, now that we got everything all cleaned back up, we can move the car back into the shop. And I'm just going to jump out and I'm going to quickly take a look at the suspension and, just kind of figure out if I can raise the front end up a little bit, just get some more clearance. I'm just going to, see what I can do, and also just kind of take a general look at the camber, make sure the tire's not like way out or anything like that. All right, so we have a seat in the car and we got a hood on the car, and in order to take the car out on the road, we need some seat belts. So it's time to start putting some belts in. The first thing I need to do is just to make sure I know what size of like nuts I need and stuff like that, and just kind of figure it out. So obviously the shoulder belts go through the back of the seat. Those going to go onto the dash or the back bar there. And so one thing I need to do is I need to figure out how to attach these to the rear seat bar, because I don't know. So after I get these all just kind of loosely in place, I will go off camera and I'll figure out how that all works, and then I will come back. Oh yeah, I love just sitting in the car and just playing and testing and playing pretend. It's I'm a kid again. Whatever. It's fine. I like it. But it's time to figure out how to attach these to the back. And so I go off camera. I figure that out. And I read all of the instructions for attaching these to a bar. And one thing I need to do is the end of these the end of these belts are stitched, so they fold back over on themselves and they stitched them. Well, that stitched part is way too thick for what I need to do here. So you can see the belt is through the loop, it goes around the bottom of the bar, it comes through the top of the loop, through the back of the loop, goes through the front of the loop, and then it loops back around over on top of itself again. Well, it's too thick to go through there, so I need to rip all that stitching out, and then I can continue on installing this. All right, so now that I got the lap belts installed, I'm just gonna take a quick jump in the seat and just see if those lap belts should be, roughly the correct length, because obviously when I'm actually racing and I got all my race equipment on, I'm gonna tighten these way down, but they're gonna be pretty loose just while I'm street driving. But yeah, so just a quick check to see if it works, and we can continue on. So what I'm going to do really quickly is just check the thread on some of the eyelets that'll go into the body for attaching the belts to the car. But with that is all the time that we have for this video. So as always, if you've stuck around this long, I'd like to thank you for viewing, and we'll catch you in the next one.